Hey guys, it's Justin back with an engineer's perspective, and today I'm doing my initial impressions video of Magnacut. I've got it in this here mule that Prentice Goodwin sent me. Thank you, sir. You're a gentleman. Call it a first impressions, but I've got a little bit of time on this one now. I've got about 6 edges into it, and quite a bit of cardboard cut up, not gonna lie. It's hard to use it in kind of my normal EDC things, being a fixed blade and not having a sheath. So a lot of artificial wear to kind of understand what it's doing, but I think it's still very valid, but not perfect. But anyways, that's enough for me to kind of form some initial thoughts and kind of confirm or disprove my expectations. And in terms of expectations, I'd say this pretty much hits it right on the head. It is exactly as described, exactly as designed. That being that Laren Thomas, Dr. Laren Thomas, don't do him discredit there, who designed the steel, was shooting for a kind of a stainless 4V. And I think that is precisely what he's landed on here, which is a good thing. I will mention, I am in my very cold garage. It is negative 18 degrees outside in December of 2021. What the hell? But anyways, and yeah, that's a really great thing to have a stainless 4V. And it's really an accomplishment, I guess. There's nothing else that's really out there quite like that. And I'm pretty excited about it. You know, there's nothing that has such a high level of stainlessness, so high that Spyderco is actually replacing LC200N in this Native 5 salt with Magnacut. That's how stainless they found it to be. I think that's very interesting. And to have such high toughness, such a fine grain, I almost dropped it there. And that's what I think is really beautiful about this. If I had a complaint, I'd say that we're seeing it in the hardness ranges we were expecting. The average of the mules from Spyderco, as they tested them, was 62.7. So I mean, it's basically 63 Rockwell seems like the target, and that's pretty freaking amazing. Really can't complain with that at all. But in terms of the grand scheme of life and steel choices where stainlessness isn't something that I'm worried about, is I do wish it was harder. Something, because like Spyderco's 4V was coming out at, 60, 64 Rockwell and above, I think. And you can get K390 at 65 and above, and so on and so forth. And I like that. And this steel has the toughness to do it. So if there was a way that Spyderco could push this up into that hardness with a more expensive heat treat, or if this is the absolute maximum, what Laren found was like 64 is probably going to be the max that a mass production group is going to be able to do. So maybe if the average was between 63 and 64, that would have been nice. But this is definitely competition leading for its class. So that's a really great thing. In sharpening, it feels very similar to Cruwear. I've got one here in the Manix 2, and I've also got another one in a pair of 3. But it feels just a little bit stickier, a little bit bitier than Cruwear, very minutely, but it does. So I think it's closer to 4V than it is Cruwear in feel, but I don't have 4V, so I can't say. I'm just assuming that's what 4V would be like. But yeah, it's super fine grain. That's the really impressive thing. What stainless steel out there has a grain this fine that has any carbide volume to speak of, really? So, and you can tell the way it sharpens up. It's pretty fantastic. And on that note of a nice sharpening stainless, I kind of wanted to bring in what honestly comes to my mind in terms of what does this knife compare to. So I got S30V here, which it's a total replacement for. So there's no reason to use S30V anymore for me between the two. At these hardnesses, forget about S30V. And this takes a very decent working edge. After that front end sharpness is gone, you get to a working edge that is totally good to go. No reason to go to S30V anymore. Better working edge than S30V, I think, honestly. But I think that, anyways, I prefer it over S30V all day, every day. But what this brings to my mind is more, because I've already left these things behind, is the nice sharpening stainless steels. This, like a comparison for this to me, is like SG2, SPY 27, and even LC200N in some ways, and which is actually a very direct comparison soon because of that stainlessness. So Magnacut doesn't sharpen as well as LC200N. It doesn't. It's a heck of a lot harder and has a lot more carbides in it than LC200N with its low amount of nitrides. So you'd expect LC200N to be the better sharpening steel, and it is. They both come up fine, but just nothing quite sharpens like LC200N other than your really nice carbon steels for me. So that's kind of, you're never gonna do that, get there, in my opinion. So part of why I bought this particular knife was for that sharpening aspect. So in a way, the upgrade from LC200N to Magnacut is kind of losing that. So that's like a little bit of a bummer for me, but it's worth it. Like, especially for most people, this is gonna be just so much better. It's in every way, really. So, and it's still a very nice sharpening steel. But SG2, it reminds me a lot of SG2, sharpening it. I've got it in a kitchen knife that's around this same hardness. So, would I choose this over SG2? Yeah, I would. This is a lot tougher, a lot finer grain. It's got all the carbides you need for a working edge if you're interested in that in a pocket knife for sure. In the kitchen, maybe not. But it comes up just as fine, just as easy to deburr, which is the big thing. Like it comes up just as good as any of the really nice sharpening stainless steels. Another comparison would be like SPY 27, which I think is an SG2 killer. But I don't have any to compare it to. But I think in terms of sharpening that it has some of those advantages that those steels have while having a finer grain, being tougher, and being more stainless. So I think it's going to beat those out. Yeah. On the note of this being a Magnacut, if you can't tell, I am going to buy the Magnacut version of the Native 5 Salt. Looking forward to that. Sharpening it, I've sharpened it on the Venevs resin bonded stones a lot. That's mostly what I've been working with is diamonds. I sharpened it twice. Those went great, super easy, as is most things on it. But as soon as I switched over to the Japanese waterstones on this, I did the Chosera 800, Chosera 3K, Shapton Pro 5K, and Shapton Glass 8K. Those have all seen this knife. That was a total transition. SG2 feels better on those stones than Magnacut does, I would say, from my limited experience so far. Those type of traditional, not that traditional Japanese waterstones, but the normal Japanese waterstones people think of, even the high-end ones like I was describing, they're not going to have a hard time sharpening this steel, but it's going to feel like a steel that has higher wear resistance. So a lot of the really poor sharpeners out there that say, oh, this steel is so hard to sharpen, that steel's so hard to sharpen, the only steel that's easy to sharpen is like Poopy Soft White No. 2. Those guys might say, ooh, Magnacut, pretty hard to sharpen. But that's not the case. And it does come up nice on those. Not as nice as on the diamonds, just to be straight with you. Not as nice, but very acceptable and happy with those results. But it's going to take more time. And it's going to feel like it's taking more time on the stones. It feels hard. It feels wear resistant. But it does come up fine on those. Last thing I wanted to mention is the mule itself. Prentice did this para wrap. It's been very comfortable, holding up great. Nice work. Glad you did it. This little humpy hump here was like twice the length as it came to me, and I ground it down because it was just terrible. Like, why? Why is it so big? Especially for me where I sharpen at like a 45, that thing just bumping into the stone, it was terrible. And it like hooks toward the blade. It's just awful. So I ground that down, huge improvement. Added a sharpening choil back there, huge improvement. So that's made that experience a lot better. The mules have pretty freaking thick geometry. Like this is well over 20 thousandths. Came at about 18 degrees per side, which is more or less where I've left it. It's probably at like 17 right now. Oops, I almost cut myself. So the mule itself, I would never buy this knife design. But I'm glad that we've got the steel in it to play around with, and it's been a real pleasure. As you can see, I've got the KME jaws there. I'm getting ready to do some quantitative numbers. I've just been doing qualitative tests so far, so this is going to be in that as well as this. And I'm trying to decide on the third one. I'm looking for a stainless. Right now I'm thinking it's either going to be my Para 3 in M390. That M390 is pretty hard, probably around 61. Or it's going to be my Para Military 2 and S35 VN, and that's going to be around like 59, 59 and a half Rockwell. It beats out all my S30V that I've got. So it's a nice S35 VN, or decent S35 VN, you know. So put down in the comments what you think you would want to see for the stainless steel comparison. Do you want to see LC200N against it instead? Now that that's going to be a direct upgrade there. Do you want to see, you know, the vanilla S30V, or, you know, a softer M390 analog? What do you want to see? So let me know down in the comments. Yeah, and that's all I've got. Magnacut as a stainless steel. You know, I remember years ago, like when Spy 27 came out, I was ecstatic. I was like, finally, a stainless steel that's run at 62 Rockwell. I was like, wow, like this is what I've been waiting for. And I was very excited for that. And now Magnacut is doing the same thing, but very possibly better. I don't have any Spy 27 to say for sure, but that's pretty fantastic. So in terms of stainless steel, this is probably where I would go. These are probably my two preferred stainless steels that I would choose. I would normally choose, you know, K390 over either of these, but if I had to keep stainless in my collection, I think these would really be the way to go for my personal preferences. So I think it's pretty great. There will be more in-depth video with quantitative comparisons and all that coming up, but not yet. If you want to watch my video on the chemistry details of this, go check that out on the channel. Other than that, that's all I've got for you. Have a good one. Bye.